Speak now or forever hold your peace. I'm Jessica Denson, and this is Lights On. A fascist to the core. That's General Mark Milley. Just now, we revealed, speaking of Trump in Bob Woodward's new book. I'm running out of ways to explain how bad this is. That was Charlie Warzel this week in The Atlantic, describing the utter depravity and nihilism we are seeing out of Donald Trump and his enablers in this final stretch to the election. And just today, we're learning the lengths that the self-proclaimed champion of free speech, Elon Musk, has gone to, using his massive platform to censor stories that are harmful to the Trump-Vance ticket, all while openly coordinating with Donald Trump while he pours millions of dollars into a super PAC in what appears to be a massive violation of campaign finance law. This is happening on the same week that him and his convict candidate of choice spread massive deadly lies about a hurricane. And while Donald Trump runs from his 60 Minutes interview and second debate, only to follow that up with calls for the licenses of CBS. And he has previously called for the license of ABC to be revoked. Very, very serious attacks on the Fourth Estate. Now, as with Elon Musk, as with Donald Trump, the projection on every single issue is strong and dangerous. It's a complete revision of reality. It is not tethered to what is actually happening at all, as we're going to talk about a lot today. Donald Trump likes to say the enemy is within. This is his divide and conquer strategy. But I would agree with him that the enemy is within as far as him and his enablers. An enemy is not one another, as they would have us believe. But this is the authoritarian playbook. Divide us to conquer us. Trump and his devices, enablers, are the enemies on every issue that is at the heart of this election. They are obviously the enemies of democracy. They are the enemies of the economy. They are the enemies of safety and protection, even as they go out and try to put out this paternalistic, abusive sense of protection. They are the enemy of free speech, which is at the heart of a free society. You might not know this, but today is exactly 1 year to the day that my years-long battle in the courts freed hundreds of formerly gagged Trump staffers to speak their minds about Donald Trump and the danger he poses. We all know how unfit and unwell he is. We saw it up close and personal. So to any Trump staffer out there from 2016, there's hundreds, if not thousands of them, also volunteers, independent contractors who, before our work in the courts, did not have a voice. My legal team gave you back that voice from a would-be dictator who would have taken it from you literally for the rest of your lives. Will you, I'm asking anyone out there, will you squander this precious opportunity to stand on the right side of history for a career or out of fear or personal considerations? Please, if any of you actually believe in a God, which so many of the people on the MAGA right profess to, I know that you will come to regret your silence in this moment and not seizing this opportunity. And you can't get it back. You've got 25 days left. You can't get it back. So again, speak now or never. I want to address two other things that really were just kind of nauseating themes this week in the news. And one was that somehow Donald Trump is taking back the lead or putting Kamala Harris on her edge. And there were a lot of discussions. Just last night, I tuned into CNN and saw this panel debate about Kamala Harris not being authentic enough or not being real enough in interviews. And there could be some legitimate criticism of her performance, but it is unbelievable the focus on her quote unquote authenticity when the counter is Donald Trump. Now, can everybody please join me? Say this with me. Donald Trump is not authentic. Donald Trump is not authentic. He is a con artist. His number one con is in making people believe that he is authentic. It's got to be like the number one delusion that I woke up from when I woke up from my delusion of ever believing this man cared about our country or any of us. He is not authentic. He is a professional bullshitter and has been for many, many years. So the criticism, the compliments of him as being authentic, instead of bringing out how every word out of this man's mouth is pure projection, delusion, and lies. And on the other side, you got a woman who maybe, yes, is repeating some talking points in some interviews, but I don't know, are you watching the same campaign events that I'm watching? Are you watching the Univision interview? Are you watching her on The View? She is very real and authentic. And how dare they attack this woman who, like I said before, I have differences with. We can raise our legitimate criticisms, but to act like the problem here is in a Kamala Harris campaign not being authentic, when you've got a serial liar con artist on the other side and you're not focusing on the deceit and dangerous deceit that he is putting into the American ecosystem in the lead up to an election that will literally determine our future as a free world. Let's get things right. So we're going to spend some time on this today, the really insane media ecosystem that we're living in, the sane washing, as some analysts have described it, of the coverage of Donald Trump, also the bombshell revelations, more of them that came out of Bob Woodward's book. Really, really important disclosures about Kavanaugh and the cover-up that Donald Trump was involved in putting Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, due to the very excellent work of Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who of course is always on top of this corruption that's going on at SCOTUS. And we're going to go to Obama, who is, I got to tell you, former President Obama has 0 Fs left to give as far as the utter depravity and lies and grift that Donald Trump continues to peddle. And he's out in full force in swing states, setting the record straight. So we're going to shine a bright light on some very important course correction from President Obama today. We've got a great show. You got me again for the hour on this live episode on Friday. Sorry we started a couple of minutes late. We had a little technical issue at the top, but so grateful as always to have you with me. Let's start with focusing on what's going on with Elon Musk and Donald Trump, because this is something that, again, in a normal election would be a massive scandal. This is somebody who pretends, and I know so many people who are sucked in by the personality of even Elon Musk, who think this man is a leader, who think that he is a brilliant person. And this is someone who is just peddling insane lies about a deadly hurricane, that there's not federal response when there is federal response, who is now going all in. This New York Times article that you just saw up on your screen is just reporting the lengths that Elon Musk is going to help Donald Trump win. He's literally temporarily moving to Pennsylvania. He's rallying other billionaires to support Trump. He has spent between $140 and $180 million on Donald Trump's super PAC. Meanwhile, this is a direct violation of campaign finance laws. Meanwhile, directly coordinating with Donald Trump and campaigning with him. Where is the oversight? Where is the enforcement of our campaign finance laws? He's also, as I mentioned, constantly with Trump, with this sick J.D. Vance, who we pointed out last week, the sick deflection and projection on the issue of censorship that I have lived so personally firsthand from MAGA world and from Donald Trump, claiming that Kamala Harris or somebody else is out there censoring the right, when they are the ones literally censoring information. This article today in the New York Times pointed out how Trump's campaign worked with Musk on X, on Twitter, to prevent links to hacked campaign materials from circulating on the social media platform last month. Now, if you'll remember, there was a journalist named Ken Klippenstein, and he shared a link to materials allegedly obtained in an Iranian hack of the Trump campaign. X, as a result, suspended his account, blocked links to his Substack where he had posted the materials. And this is, you got to remember, this is Donald Trump, who celebrated WikiLeaks in 2016, who said, Russia, go get Hillary's emails, who X and Twitter and Elon Musk and Donald Trump have peddled so much Russian disinformation about the Bidens, about Hunter Biden, and spread so much. That's just one category. Spread so much dangerous, illegitimate, gotten from illegal means information on this platform of his in the name of free speech. But when it goes against his billionaire buddy, who he wants to install in the White House, he's willing to censor anything harmful. So that's just one example. As I mentioned, funding this super PAC that he is directly governing with millions of dollars while openly coordinating with Donald Trump and his campaign. Direct violation of campaign finance law. So, this is just, this is properly described in this one of these articles, the one that I cited right at the top, is kind of just Trump throwing all the shit at the fan in this final stretch. It's not just one little way to define his opponent, one way to try to malign and define Kamala Harris. He's literally just turning every reality on its head to try to drive people insane. And through that insanity and fear that he is putting in the hearts and minds of people, to convince them that the only answer is to vote for him and to have him as this sick kind of protector, abuser protector. Let's go to Obama. He, like I mentioned, was in Pennsylvania yesterday, again today in Pittsburgh. He is going to be out in full force, just doing everything in his power to rally all of that Obama coalition that got him elected twice, to try to reconstitute it. I know there's a lot of outreach. I prefer to use engagement as one proper lesson from the Trump campaign in 2016. Don't use the word outreach, use the word engagement. I always use that word because I think it's a much more inclusive kind of concept of how we are engaging with one another and trying to reach one another. But he's trying to engage particularly with men. You've probably heard a lot of discussion this week about the concern of losing male voters. And I want to talk more about this on the other side, but let's start with Obama's clarification on what real strength looks like. Lesson for men, lesson for women, lesson for all of us. Here's Obama on strength.
The idea of intentionally trying to deceive people in their most desperate and vulnerable moments. And my question is, when did that become okay? I'm not looking for applause right now. I want to ask Republicans out there, people who are conservative, who didn't vote for me, who didn't agree with me. I had friends who disagreed with me on every issue. When did that become okay? Why would we go along with that? I mean, if your coworkers acted like that, they wouldn't be your coworkers very long. If you're in business and somebody you're doing business with just outright lies and manipulates, you stop doing business with them. even if you had a family member who acted like that, you might still love them, but you'd tell them you got a problem. And you wouldn't put them in charge of anything. And yet when Donald Trump lies or cheats or shows utter disregard for our Constitution, when he calls POWs losers or fellow citizens vermin, people make excuses for it. They think it's okay. They think, well, at least he's owning the libs. He's really sticking it to them. It's okay as long as our side wins. And by the way, I'm sorry, gentlemen. I've noticed this especially with some men who seem to think Trump's behavior, the bullying and the putting people down, is a sign of strength. And I am here to tell you that is not what real strength is. It never has been. Real strength is about working hard and carrying a heavy load without complaining. Real strength is about taking responsibility for your actions and telling the truth even when it's inconvenient. Real strength is about helping people who need it and standing up for those who can't always stand up for themselves. That is what we should want for our daughters and for our sons. And that is what I want to see in a president of the United States of America.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this theme that is out there this week of Donald Trump somehow being a protector. I mean, he's a protector in the sense that somebody in an abusive relationship abuses you and then convinces you that you can't live without them and makes you think that you need them to survive and keeps you coming back and sweet talks you to get back into the relationship with them only to abuse you more and more. I mean, is that what you want? Is that what the American people want and need? Someone who so debilitates and weakens them that they're so helpless and so desperate that they think they need this abusive, quote unquote, protector in their lives? Or do they want someone who, as Obama is describing, teaches you real strength, teaches you how to take care of yourself? Because that's what a real protector and leader does. They don't just guard you all the time with their questionable protection. They give you the tools to protect yourself, to defend yourself. You know what? When I was thinking about this theme this week of protector, I remember when I was in the right-wing mesmeric ecosystem, one thing they always liked to rail against was the nanny state. How, Democrats, quote unquote, Marxist communist Democrats wanted to turn us into a nanny state. Well, this week it sure as hell feels like Donald Trump and MAGA want to turn us into a daddy state, but not just any daddy state, like a really sick, perverted, abusive daddy state, the kind of daddy state that you want to hope nobody has to live through, but some unfortunately do. It's a really sick construct. I'm going to kind of take that theme and go to Kavanaugh. But before we do, I mentioned at the top how the projection is on every single issue. And we talked last week about how they say the economy is number one. And I don't get it. How can the economy be number one when democracy is so serious and so much on the line? But okay, the economy is number one. Once again, stock market opened at a record high today. And this is a theme that I have repeated so many times because it was another major awakening for me about the economy. And that is that Democrats fix it. Democrats rebuild it. They grow it. Republicans come in and sabotage it, take credit for their work, and then try to run on fixing it again. Here's Obama saying it in a way that only he can.
And the reason some people think, wow, I don't know, I remember that economy when he first came in being pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good because it was my economy. We had had 75 straight months of job growth that I handed over to him. It wasn't something he did. I had spent 8 years cleaning up the mess that the Republicans had left me the last time. So just in case everybody has a hazy memory, he didn't do nothing except those big tax cuts.
Yeah, big tax cuts to help his friends like Elon Musk. Okay, so again, so serious. We're not covering this race in the way that we need to. Donald Trump is literally out on the campaign trail with Nazi rhetoric. You've got Stephen Miller out there today in Aurora, Colorado, putting up pictures of migrants on the screen and saying, do you want these people in your neighborhood? You don't want them. You don't recognize them. I mean, this is straight out of a Nazi playbook. There is something that was prominent in Nazi Germany, and that's eugenics, claiming that some people by their genes are just not equal or are inferior to other people. And Donald Trump is literally repeating this rhetoric on the campaign trail in trying to divide and conquer and fearmonger. Again, the media is not reporting this as eugenics. They're putting other kind of euphemistic headlines about this language. But let me just remind you that that's exactly what it is. And here is a clip. We're not playing much of Donald Trump on this show anymore, but I want you to understand how serious it is and just how much history is repeating itself as far as the very worst things that we have experienced in the past recent history, world history. We can recognize it and we can stop it in the next 25 days. Here's Donald Trump with conservative MAGA commentator Hugh Hewitt on his radio show.
How about allowing people to come to an open border, 13,000 of which were murderers, many of them murdered far more than one person, and they're now happily living in the United States. You know, now a murderer, I believe this, it's in their genes, and we got a lot of bad genes in our country right now. They had 400.
We've got a lot of bad genes in our country right now. Okay, now, again, as a theme, one theme that I bring out all the time is these fascist attempts are always tied with misogyny. It goes hand in hand. And we had this blockbuster report come out this week from Senator Whitehouse, as I mentioned, about the Kavanaugh confirmation. And I think we all kind of felt, I remember so tangibly how I felt when that confirmation was going on. I was in the heat of my battle against Trump's NDA. I had actually just suffered a pretty significant loss and didn't know exactly how I was going to push forward with invalidating this NDA, although I knew that I was going to. And I remember watching those hearings, listening to them from my car as I drove up to the courthouse in New York City, and just feeling like it was that whole situation was such a violation of us all. How so many women in the wake of Christine Blasey Ford's revelations were coming forward. And Donald Trump made statements at the time that he was open. He said this. He said the FBI was, quote, talking to everybody. And he wrote on Twitter, I, quote, want them to interview whomever they deem appropriate at their discretion. Well, once again, that was a massive lie. And there was a massive cover-up going on by Donald Trump and his White House to sweep thousands of allegations under the rug. Senator Whitehouse took the time to really dig into this and find out what the hell was going on with the FBI during that time. Now, of course, remember, it was Brett Kavanaugh getting onto the Supreme Court that enabled Roe versus Wade to be overturned. So the whole construct here, a man who abused women, then being able to overturn this decades-long precedent protecting women and now putting their lives at stake and taking away their bodily autonomy. It is one sick construct if there ever was one. Here's Senator Whitehouse describing the findings of his report this week.
Here is the nutshell summary of the report we released on the supplemental background investigation into Brett Kavanaugh. The first finding is that all that talk about the FBI having free reign and able to interview who it wanted was completely false. The entire investigation was completely directed by the White House, with the FBI only as the mere agent of the White House. The second point is that when we were told that this was done by the book, that was highly misleading, because for supplemental background investigations, it turns out there is no book. We also found out that the directions were not to pursue corroborating evidence, only direct evidence. And then the Republican senators voting for Kavanaugh all said, oh, look, no corroborating evidence. Well, that was the plan all along. The last thing, the tip line was a complete sham. No tip was ever investigated by the FBI. The Kavanaugh tips were sorted out of regular FBI tip line traffic and delivered to the White House uninvestigated, where they all died, unless they were used to direct the FBI away from any good, meaningful witnesses. So this was not a legit investigation, as I think many of us surmised.
Not at all. And I mean, the whole, what he talks about no playbook from the FBI, this is really kind of alarming. I know we've gotten really good things coming out of the FBI. There's also some very broken apparatuses that really need help. And I think this is an indication of one of them. In his investigation, Senator Whitehouse literally was like, depending on a public YouTube video from the FBI to explain their process, because there really isn't one, as he was explaining, for something like this. But basically, the FBI was instructed by the White House to talk to only 10 potential witnesses and was not given the leeway to pursue corroborating evidence. And they put out a statement about this in the wake of Senator Whitehouse's report. They said, quote, the FBI does not have the independent authority to expand the scope of a supplemental background investigation outside the requesting agency's parameters. So in this instance, apparently, I mean, this was basically handled like a job interview by the White House, where they're asking the FBI to do a background check. And because they are the one requesting the background check, that the White House was given the leeway to define those parameters. And as a result, over 4,500 calls and messages related to Kavanaugh were directed directly to the White House, where they were then tossed or buried. So even when senators contacted the FBI directly with the names of people, because we remember this, there were so many people, so many classmates of Kavanaugh from Yale, people talking about him exposing himself to them in perverse ways at college parties. I mean, this was obviously someone whose behavior made him completely unfit to be a Supreme Court justice. And people were speaking out. They were speaking now or forever holding their peace. They were doing their patriotic duty to warn the American country of the character and unfitness of this man, much like Donald Trump. And everything was just swept under the rug. The FBI did not even contact these people. One more thing I want to point out from this. The report from White House described how 2 days before voting on Kavanaugh, senators were given about 1 hour, literally 1 hour, to review more than 1,600 pages of material collected by the FBI. And it was mostly just raw information from that tip line, because again, the FBI did not pursue these leads. So these are the forces. Donald Trump, convicted sexual abuser, or found sexually liable for violating women, and a man with thousands of tips about him. in collusion to strip millions of American women of their bodily autonomy. That's what we've got going on. There's a piece in The Guardian by a woman named Moira Donegan, and she said it kind of in a way that really, really puts it into perspective. She said, Trump's ascent to the top of the Republican Party was innovative this way. He brought the prurient frat boys of America into an alliance with the repressive preacher types. To say that such men hate women would be almost an understatement. They don't think about women enough to hate us. To them, we are little more than props in their quest for petty little gratifications, nothing more than tools they can use to sate their egos and get what they want as quickly as possible. That defines, yes, their view of women, but really to me, that defines Donald Trump and MAGA's view of the entire American electorate, with women as the worst victims. But really, anybody who is supporting this man, he is just using to advance his aims for power. We're going to expose more of it on the other side, more revelations from the Woodward book, and so much more after a quick break from our sponsor. I just want to come back from the break with a thought that came to me as I was preparing the show today. There has been some discouraging trends in the reporting this week about, as I mentioned earlier, Donald Trump claiming that he now has the lead, or that he's putting Kamala Harris on her heels. Understand, as I've mentioned before, this is a tactic to discourage you, to make you lose hope. Do not buy it for 1 second. Remember that we are not here because Donald Trump is a winner. We are here because Donald Trump is a loser. He has lost time and time and time again. And now he is just trying to run for president, not because he won before, but to stay out of jail for the crimes that he committed when he lost the last time. So just remember, in this final stretch, as you're gathering everything and pouring your heart and soul into winning the White House, holding the Senate so vital, and taking back the House, that we have had historic wins time and time again when Donald Trump is in the political landscape. Defeat in 2020. Instead of a red wave, we had a red drip in 2022. I remember even back in 2018, which is the first election that I completely turned my support from Republicans to Democrats, and Democrats totally swept in Congress in that election. So every time that Trump has been on the ballot since 2016, he has lost. And again, 1 year ago today, he was a massive loser in my case. So this is one repeat loser that we are up against. Do not be discouraged. Just be alert, and don't let your guard down, and fight with joy and confidence until we get over that finish line on November 5th. I was going through some older clips, and we're going to even wrap this show with an older clip today that kind of brings a lot of these themes into focus. But one of them picks up on Obama's theme, a lot of the themes from Obama yesterday and today, which is that the grift is so real. The grift is taking advantage of everyone that believes in Donald Trump. He is not there even for his most ardent supporters. And I want to refresh a clip from a few years back where David K. Johnston is talking about his book and just how much Donald Trump fleeced his supporters, how cruel it was. He's the author of a book called The Big Cheat. And here he is talking to Breonna Keeler a few years back about all of that, hundreds of millions of dollars, something like $500 million was raised when Donald Trump lost the election and tried to convince his supporters that he didn't. And only $9 million was spent on lawyers. So that left a hell of a lot of money for Donald Trump. Here's David K. Johnston just reminding everybody how low it went.
Fascinating. One of the examples that you highlight in his Stop the Steal profiteering that really stands out, I know that's why you focused on it, has to do with someone named Stacey Blatt of Kansas City. And this is someone who, as you mentioned, was ripped off by Trump's unchecked the box swindle. So you said, well, in hospice care, Blatt heard Rush Limbaugh tell his radio audience that the Trump 2020 campaign needed money urgently. Blatt gave $500, half of his monthly income, via WinRed, a commercial enterprise that Trump used to process gifts. Over the next month, Trump's campaign tapped Blatt's bank account 6 more times, taking the dying man's last $3,000. I mean, David, just put into perspective how unusual that fundraising practice is and if there's going to be any ramifications for it.
Well, essentially, they were stripping people of their assets as fast as they could because they were running out of money in the campaign. It ought to be treated as a criminal matter. I don't expect it to, just as I show in the book how Trump put our national security at risk with the efforts of his son-in-law to refinance 666 Fifth Avenue in New York. And we became in the bizarre position of the president of the United States attacking Qatar, where we have our most important military base in the Middle East, and aiding the Saudis, who did end up ultimately helping the Kushner family. The profiteering that went on here, particularly by Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, is just extraordinary, and in any previous administration would have been dominant front page news day after day after day. And yet a lot of this was sort of lost in the background, Brianna.
Yeah. And you make it clear, look, this was not obviously to the benefit of the United States and its position in the world. It was to the benefit of the Trump family for sure.
Yes, all to the benefit of the Trump family. That's all Donald Trump is about, as Barack Obama will tell you, as anybody clear on this message, as Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are doing so well. Donald Trump is out for one man, and that is Donald Trump, not any other man or woman. Please, please. Again, I will say again, as I have on this show, one thing I realized in waking up from how I had been brainwashed is it felt at the time when my friends or others would try to tell me that the Democrats were not evil and that Trump was dangerous. It felt like they were against me or against us. Anybody raising these warnings is not against you. They're trying to save you. We're not against you. We're not against each other. We're trying to save our country as a whole. We're trying to protect all of our freedom. They are trying to pit us against each other. They are against all of us, the corrupt leaders, not the people. Let's make that distinction. Speaking about corrupt leaders and those who really, really make their people suffer and the aspirations that Donald Trump has, I made a comparison to North Korea last week, and some people commented that that comparison was too extreme. I really don't think it is, because while we may be far from the plight of the North Korean people, those are the aspirations that Donald Trump has. What you see right now, those images on your screen of that kind of unwavering allegiance, fearful, starving. These people literally are starving in North Korea, allegiance to this man who controls their lives. That's what Donald Trump aspires to. I'm going to play for a minute a clip that I like to keep at the top of people's minds about how Donald Trump admires this kind of scenario that you're watching right now. But one of the really scary but not surprising revelations in Bob Woodward's book this week was that Lindsey Graham compared Mar-a-Lago to North Korea. He said going to Mar-a-Lago is a little bit like going to North Korea. Everybody stands up and claps every time Trump comes in. You know, it's funny because it reminded me of a clip that I played a few months back, and we can play the B-roll of it right now, of Donald Trump walking into Congress, into a congressional building for the first time since January 6th, and being greeted by all of these sycophant Republican politicians. There is Lindsey Graham, saddest man alive, clapping for him, who warned us all. He told us how the Republican Party would be eaten alive if Donald Trump was embraced. And look at the way they clap for him. There's your little mini North Korea right there in the GOP. And they would have the followers, the Republican voters, be the same. But here is that clip. I'll never forget it. It was right at the time that I was beginning to speak out I spoke out in 2017, but the first time I went on air was in 2019, early 2019, when I finally got my lawyers after fighting the battle for a year on my own. And I was so grateful for God putting the words in my mouth in that live interview back in 2019. And I warned everybody about the danger that Donald Trump posed and how we needed to have all hands on deck to confront it. But one thing that I didn't mention, and I said to my lawyers afterward, I didn't mention North Korea. And they're like, it's okay, you were great. But it was the one thing, because I recognized how serious this was and how much of a dictator and authoritarian wannabe Donald Trump was. And this clip had been just, I think, days before. Here's Trump talking about North Korea.
Are we close to seeing Mr. Kim here at the White House?
Could happen. I mean,
they talked about that yesterday.
I would have him. Yeah, I think it's something that could happen. Yeah. Hey, he's the head of a country, and I mean, he's the strong head. Mm-hmm. Don't let anyone think anything different. Right. He speaks, and his people sit up at attention. I want my people to do the same.
Well, just before you met with him, he cleaned house.
He speaks, his people sit up at attention. I want my people to do the same. Folks, this is who this man is. He doesn't want freedom for you. He wants obedience from you. He wants loyalty, unwavering loyalty, so that he can achieve his ends. And he's got a whole army of people in Project 2025 led by J.D. Vance, the likes of J.D. Vance, to enact these oppressive authoritarian plans in the United States of America, the freest country in the world. That's who he is. That's what he wants. Period. Some other really scary revelations, really just warnings of how much worse it can be, as is everything that we know about the Trump administration. The 2.0 would be so much more dire, so much more unhinged and off the rails. We learned that Donald Trump was providing COVID tests, even as he was going out there holding rallies, saying there's no, don't shut anything down, come and mass congregate, killed his own supporter, Herman Cain. But he knew that this was a serious situation, and he wanted to set up his friend Vladimir Putin with the protection that he needed. So what does he do? He sends COVID tests while Jared Kushner is turning the, ventilator business into a business in the United States and seeing which, political friends he will give the ventilators to first. Donald Trump is sending Russia COVID-19 tests. According to Woodward's book, War, Trump, quote, secretly sent Putin a bunch of Abbott point-of-care COVID test machines for his personal use. Please don't tell anybody you sent these to me, Putin said to Trump, according to Woodward. I don't care, Trump replied. But just today, the Kremlin, of all places, confirmed that Trump sent these Russia COVID-19 tests after Trump denied everything in this book, and his lying spokesperson, Stephen Chung, claimed that the book was just full of lies. Got the Kremlin confirming it today. So once again, Trump first, Russia first, definitely not America first. It's been a long time since we've shown a light on what's going on in Ukraine. And of course, we know that if Donald Trump gets elected, he's going to do Vladimir Putin's bidding. His idea of a peace deal is surrender and handing the aggressor territory that does not belong to him. I think sometimes we forget just how serious of a situation the Russian people live through and the Ukrainians who have fought that aggression live through, the degree of suppression and corruption that the Russian people endure and their attacks on free press. We started off today talking about the attacks on free press. And of course, you don't have it in a country like Russia. And you've had Ukrainian journalists in the captured parts of Ukraine trying to report on life in Russian occupied territories. One of those journalists was a woman named Victoria Rush. I'm gonna mispronounce her name, Roshina, I think, and she was detained back in 2023 by Russian forces, and it was confirmed by Ukraine just today that she died in Russian detention. She would have turned 28 this month. She was an award-winning journalist for documenting the life in Zaporizhia and Russian-occupied territories. This is what happens in a society run by somebody like Donald Trump. Journalists are detained and journalists are killed. We know opposition leaders like Navalny lose their life. It's very, very serious. 25 days to keep us from that eventuality. So I wanted to share with you before we wrap up today a clip, because it kind of, I was thinking about this week as we had these themes of, protection that I've mentioned so many times today about somehow Donald Trump being a protector. It is such a sick construct. Either the thought that he is a strong man, because that is not what strength is. Strength is not winning at all costs. Strength is not a zero-sum game. Strength is not lying and just using any means, destroying lives in your wake. That is not strength. Strength is truth, is light, is love. Strength is giving others the ability to take care of themselves. Strength is not misogyny or domineering of one gender over another. So back in 2020, I did this interview. It was one of only 2 times I have been on the national media over the past 7 years that I have been fighting this battle against Donald Trump. But they brought me on CNN back in October of 2020 because I put out an ad with Republican Voters Against Trump supporting Joe Biden. And I reached out to my team at Protect Democracy, who was actually, they're the major group that joined me and helped bring us to this final sweeping victory a year ago. And we didn't have our victory yet back in 2020. And that was a major thing we wanted. We wanted to give those people, those staffers that I addressed at the top, the opportunity to speak out in 2020 against the censorship and the danger that we were facing with Trump then. But we didn't have a decision yet in court. So I reached out to my team. I said, please, what can I do? What can I do to speak out now? And they got me in contact with Republican Voters Against Trump. I did an ad for Biden. I was invited on the lead with Jake Tapper. And I want to play for you part of that interview because it touches on a couple things. It touches on this misogyny. It touches on the warnings that I was issuing. It touches on major question that you guys asked me, probably the number one question that you asked me, which is how could you have supported Trump in the first place? I gave a very buttoned up answer to that. And just before I play it, just to give you a little behind the scenes, this was during COVID. So they weren't like welcoming you into the studio at CNN and there was no green room, no coming to hair and makeup, none of that stuff. They bring me in. There's literally nobody even there to greet me at first. And finally, I get in contact with the producer. She tells me where to go. I end up in this room, trying to connect my mic and my earpiece. And I'm so nervous. I'm so frazzled. Finally, a tech PA comes in. He's like, are you okay? I'm like, I don't know. And I've got this, the mic is connected to the desk in front of me. It's connected to my waist. I'm all set. And then I realize that I need to grab something out of my purse. So I walk over and I'm yanked back by this wire. Anyway, it was kind of a comedy of errors. And I'm just kind of describing that because they thought I was going to be a total wreck on air. But as usual, thank God, God put the words in my mouth once again in that interview. And all of the lived experience and warnings that I had that I'm trying to bring to you to this day came through, and I was able to share. And so I want to share a clip of that interview with Jake Tapper back in 2020.
You must have known what you were getting into when you went to work for him. What do you tell them?
I tell them that's a fair assessment. And in retrospect, I agree 100%. But I spent the past administration, better part of 8 years, watching conservative media, being brainwashed into thinking that the Democrats were really dangerous and were going to take away our freedoms, which I do not believe anymore. I understand how deeply mesmerized I was into that false narrative. And I thought that Donald Trump was going to be a fighter for the American people. So I kind of put the best construction on everything he said. And Father, forgive me, believed him in his con that he was going to put his own interests aside and be a public servant for this country.
As a woman who worked for the Trump campaign, I want to get your reaction to a comment that President Trump made in an attempt, I guess, to appease suburban women at a rally yesterday. Take a listen.
Also getting your husbands, they want to get back to work, right? They want to get back to work. We're getting your husbands back to work.
I've heard from a number of women voters today who said that that was a bridge too far. That really was very demeaning towards women. Did you ever feel you were treated differently as a woman in a position of leadership on the Trump campaign back in 2016?
Of course I was. I was called a sheep by the man who hired me. That was the nicer of some more derogatory terms that he used behind my back. He's now about to be named the Federal Chief Security Information Officer. It's unfathomable. But yes, myself and numerous other women who are silenced to this day had similar experiences. Donald Trump talked a lot in 2016 about the dignity of work. I, as a woman, and just in general, as someone who came to that campaign with a spirit of service, have never experienced greater indignity or disrespect in my life. And I hope the American people understand this message. I hope they understand that when Donald Trump plays the victim, he's not the victim. He is only a victim of his own deceit. And if you want salvation for this country and redemption even for Donald Trump, he needs accountability like water in the desert. And I hope that you will give that to him. He still needs accountability like water in the desert. You know, there's a new movie out today called The Apprentice. I'm sure you've all heard of it. And I heard Jeremy Strong, who plays Roy Cohn, last night on Stephen Colbert, talking about how this isn't a pro-Trump or anti-Trump movie. And even they're getting some criticism that it humanizes Donald Trump too much. But what I would say to that point is something that was brought out in the end of that interview and was something that I have carried forward through this whole battle. And that is that even for Donald Trump, the man, he needs this accountability more than anyone. What he is a sick individual, and I mean that in the most genuine sense. Like, he is unwell, he needs help, he is unhappy, he is unloved, he is miserable. He has been lying to himself for his whole life, which is just about the most miserable existence anyone could hope for. And so, as much as it is healing for our entire country to give this man the accountability he needs and deserves, it is even healing for Donald Trump. It is the one thing that this, yes, depraved, delusional, but human man needs. So no haters here. We're love all around. What blesses one, blesses all. Finally, this man needs to get the help he needs and get out of our lives, not be that hurt person that's hurting other people anymore. And whoever else is enabling these sick lies, this completely alternative reality, sane washing, whatever you want to call it, that we talked about today, just needs to be held fully to account. And we as a country need to step into the light. Thank you, everybody, for joining me again today on another live episode of Lights On. I want to thank everybody who brought our Lights On merch last week. We sold some great hats and t-shirts, actually at your request. I created some t-shirts. We just had those hoodies, long sleeve hooded tees that you see up on the screen. But at your request, I added some t-shirts, also added some colors. I'm a big fan of white, but I know not everybody wants to wear white all the time. So I added some darker colors there too. Also did a Details Matter hat. That was a theme of the show last week, and a request from you guys to make Details Matter be on a hat. So we got a Details Matter hat as well with the Harris Wells logo on the back. As usual, I want to remind you guys I have this ongoing legal battle going on. For me, it's not done. I took care of everybody else's voice being freed, but my fight continues. We need your support. You can help us at thejessicadenson.com/donate, thejessicadenson.com/donate. Very, very grateful for your support there. All right, everybody, have a wonderful weekend. Be strong. Make sure, please check and make sure if you're mailing in your ballot. I'm tracking my own ballot right now. Make sure that it is received when you send it back. Don't just, send it in and think everything's okay. Check it every step of the way. If you have friends and family, especially in areas that are devastated by the hurricane, please, first of all, check on their well-being. We are thinking and praying for all of them. Also, check on their votes. I know that there's some battles going on in the courts right now to extend voting deadlines. They're not all being successful, voter registration deadlines and other deadlines. So check on your friends and neighbors, especially in those areas, and be strong. We've got this. 25 days. We've got to cross this finish line without a shadow of a doubt. And then, as I said before, reconstitute ourselves, because I guarantee it, the battle is not over on November 5th. All right, guys, love you so much. Have a beautiful weekend. And as always, let your light shine.